I have a question to ask everybody in the congregation. Do you have a friend or a family member have a disability? Do you know somebody who has a disability? Because this is very, very important to me. Because before my 21st birthday, I had a stroke. And it changed my whole life. Before that, I was all state in basketball, football, and all sectionals in track. I won all the sports I really went for. I was like riding on a magic carpet. Somebody just snatched it from me, and I fell on my face. My life was over. I remember the doctors saying, I'll never walk or talk again. But my mother stood beside me and saying, it will be all right. But see, I didn't know what all right meant, but I believed in my mom. She wouldn't lie to me. After that, weeks went by. I relied on my family, my friends, to help me. But it was hard for me to ask for help. During a month-long start of a recovery program in the hospital, I prayed to God daily, even hourly. I was wrestling with God. I remember asking God, if you help me to walk and talk again, I'll go anywhere for you. Just send me, I will go. After 30 days, I left the hospital. I signed myself out. People looked at me different. I looked at myself different. Going to church, I felt like an outcast. People wouldn't even talk to me. They were scared of me. I was scared of myself. After 2 years later, I had another stroke. So all the improvement I made before, it was gone. I wanted to give up, but something inside of me wouldn't let me give up. God put a resilience in me. And an inner drive to keep going in the face of this tragedy. After another recovery process, I started searching for answers. Why did this happen to me? I had never found the answer, but I found something that fed my spirit. It was Dr. James Cone's work. Eventually, this got me out of the pit of darkness. It gave me the fire to keep on going in the midst of this struggle. I'm still looking at Dr. Cone's work today. He wrote Black theology in the 60s. He was faced with Black oppression. So too, I believe God was with me in my struggle. Dr. Cone gave me the language and the fortitude to keep going. trying to create my own theology, looking at my story. Dr. Cone writes about Black oppression. I want to include disabilities. Like Howard Dean Doolittle says, African Americans with disabilities are people who are marginalized in the mainstream. And this is a tridigital jeopardy of race, disabilities, class, and gender. I'm grateful Dr. Cone's work. It helped me shape my own theology, the Black liberation theology of disabilities.
These are the words of Kendrick Kemp. I'm a PK, a preacher's kid, and the Black church is a part of me. I grew up in the Black church. It was a community. It instilled in me this Blackness. People used to come to our house and have prayer meeting and testimony services. My mother was a beacon. She supported all of the sisters in the community. They used to come to my mom to air differences or just talk about life. I was brought up in Lyons, New York. It's a rural town in upstate New York, and I experienced two worlds. One was white and affluent. The other was a Black world, and poor whites had a subculture among us. I moved between two worlds because I was good in sports. Like Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, they saw me because they needed me. But I felt more comfortable in the Black world because the Black world was my world. My father worked in a bagging plant until he was retired and was the manager of the town's Black baseball league. He was a deacon in the community before he became a pastor. He instilled both sports and spirituality in me. Baseball figures like Leroy Waterman also influenced me. He would do the split and come up with the ball. I wanted to do that. People used to come from all over to see that. I had those role models and the church. Mother Everett, Mother Dupree, the brothers, the church grounded me. It saved me from the white world. When I got in trouble, they would send me to Mother Everett's house for the weekend. I used to hate that, but I needed it. They were protecting me. So the Black church was very much my life. Both of my grandfathers were pastors, but my mother's father was also a farmer and a taxi driver and a community leader. I grew close to him even though he lived in Georgia. He instilled in me a work ethic. Yet I saw he had a disability, but that didn't stop him. Then I saw my Aunt Shelley, who had a mental health disability. She was ostracized. She was in her own world. I knew that was lonely. I saw that. I witnessed that. People weren't physically violent to her, but she experienced another type of violence. She was isolated. My grandparents didn't know what to do. They didn't have access to medical facilities, and Black churches and communities were not talking about mental health disabilities. In the church, people with disabilities were a part of the community, but there weren't any programs. Healings and cures were the focus. We would go to revivals, and they would try to put their hands on you. They would lay their hands on you, and they would say, "You're going to get healed." They were trying to cure me. I was like, "Yo, just love me." A lot of times, we get messed up with the Jesus healing stories and the cure. I think we are misinformed when it comes to those stories. Then, if I'm not cured, they put the backdrop of I'm not praying hard enough. We shouldn't start off with wholeness by allowing folks to live in their own body. So I'm very critical of the Black church because I love it so much. I always hold the mirror up to the Black church because I love it so much. And I'm not unapologetic about it. One thing I noticed was that we weren't talking about different bodies, how we would move through life with different bodies. And that says something about how we see each other, how identity plays a part in our lives. And if I don't meet the prototype of Western identity and beauty, I'm looked down upon. I'm a nobody. I'm ostracized. And some Black churches have followed that prototype. I came to create Black liberation theology of disability because of my life experiences. I grew up and I took on Black liberation at a young age and spirituality. That was part of my identity. I had to wrestle with whether I had enough courage to create a theology that incorporated both Black liberation and disabilities. I have spent a long time overcoming, yet I am not defined or identified by these accomplishments. The moment I suffered that first stroke, my identity became singular. I became disabled. While I am commonly referred to as disabled, I would claim that I have disabilities. There is a difference. Every one of us has challenges. As an African American man, as a Black man with disabilities, I am in a unique position to speak to the cultural erosion that handicaps the progress and spirit of the subjugated. The biggest blow to the progress has not been the 2 strokes suffered or the challenges I now live with. Rather, that which is most debilitating is the cultural reception. It is important for those of us with disabilities to adopt a platform that acknowledges our voice. My contention is that a theology of disability can be that voice. Disabilities are challenging, and we all face challenges. Our responsibility is to find a way to succeed in spite of our challenges. If we chose to understand disabilities as one kind of challenge, then the stigma that subjugates those of us with physical and sensory disabilities becomes moot. For even the Christ suffered a disability. It was the cross. And he accepted and suffered the cross alone so that those of us who followed would not have to. Within some churches, I am shunned. I receive a special seat and a ramp, while my emotional and spiritual needs are not addressed. There is still a taboo when it comes to people with disabilities within the church. There are those within the church that wrestle with this taboo and work to diminish it, while others see those of us with disabilities as incomplete. There are those within the church that believe they are whole, while those with disabilities are not. This approach to community is not only rampant within American culture, it's in the church as well. While experiences of humiliation and suffering are expected from communities that choose not to hold themselves accountable to the message of the gospel, it is most confounding when churches become perpetrators of such treatment as well. It is particularly confounding when those who are familiar with the work of Cone and his estimation that a Christian theology is a theology of the oppressed choose to subjugate. There are few African American advocates with political, social, and theological power who advocate for those with disabilities. I am tied to the Christian faith. It is the tradition in which my descendants developed our identity. I have an allegiance to it. However, now that I live with disabilities, the culture and language of the tradition no longer speaks to me as it once did. Now that I am more attuned to living with a disability, I have to speak my truth, no matter what, at any cost.